You should hit me with the splash gun so I cool down. Won't you come on over? We can party till the sun's down. Baby, let me buy you a drink while we're dancing to blink. I could go for some Queen Bee too. Bass is going boom boom. If you're looking for some crazy, I'll tell you everybody's standing in a line for the Waterslide. You can come on over. We can take the roller coaster. And you know everybody's looking for a ride in the Waterslide.
Hello and welcome to Movie RX, where I prescribe entertainment one movie at a time. I am your host, Dr. Benjamin, MD. What does the MD stand for? Meta Dante. I feel kind of Dante sometimes. How about you?
I think just about everybody does, yeah.
Yeah, see? That today you hear is my guest. Well, okay, first I suppose I should probably point out the music that's playing right now. Derrick, you don't hear it, but I'm playing some extra special music today, as this is going to be the first episode that airs of the summer officially. So yeah, there's that, and stay tuned at the end of the episode for a different rendition that is full length. So other than that, today joining me today is the great and all-powerful Derrick Masters. Welcome, Derrick.
You're using those terms a little loosely there, man.
Well, I mean, you're pretty knowledgeable. That and knowledge is power, right?
Sure. I mean, that's what G.I. Joe told us, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
So today we've actually got a really super special movie for me. Mostly because of who it comes from, but this movie from the View Askew-niverse. Have you ever heard it called that before?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, the View Askew-niverse was funded by selling a boatload of comics and an insurance settlement, like less than $30,000. It's the first of many movies from one of my favorite filmmakers, Kevin Smith. Today we're talking about Clerks. So as a little bit of a trigger warning today, I'm going to tell you all that this film contains a prolific amount of profanity and features a large amount of conversation about sex and sexual content. So if you're sensitive to graphic sexual discussions or profanity, maybe sit this one out. Also, no kids.
No. I'm sure most of us, I'm sure both of us saw this movie when we were like way too young to have seen this movie.
I'm pretty sure that I saw this movie sneaking it out of the living room. My dad, every weekend on Friday, my dad would go to Video Kingdom, rent 2 movies, bring them home. We'd watch one as a family, and then we had a more violent guy movie for what we called a Dad and Ben movie. Well, I'm pretty sure that this was one of those movies that he rented once in 1994, and it didn't go over well. My dad wouldn't watch it. And so instead of just leaving it on the shelf for my dad to take back to Video Kingdom the next day, I went in and grabbed it and watched it in my room while he was sleeping. Right.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think that you're probably right that this was at a very impressionable time that we watched this movie. So Miramax made this movie in 1994, written and directed by Kevin Smith, stars Brian O'Halloran, Jeff Anderson, Marilyn Gigliotti. I don't know if I said that right. And then the IMDb description on this is a day in the lives of 2 convenience store clerks named Dante and Randall as they annoy customers, discuss movies, and play hockey on the store roof. That really sucks. Jamie,
yeah.
I'm with you. That one sucks.
Yeah, that's pretty piss poor.
Yeah, that's a bad one. So yeah. Well, first, typically what I tend to go with on these things is kind of your general take on the movie. I'll just go first. Cinematography wise, I loved this movie. Because it's like, the cinematography was very artistic. It reminded me of like a noir comic,
I'll give you that.
and so it like it was unique. But the funny thing is that it was all accidental. Like it was because it was cheap.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I loved the accidental artistic side of it. The sets were awesome because they were real. He filmed it at the place where he worked after hours and before hours. So I can't complain about the sets at all. The soundtrack, you had in your notes on our joint notes thing, just kind of how many people were involved in that. Alice in Chains, Stabbing Westward, Soul Asylum. Seriously, man.
Those were just some of the big ones that popped up. And those were for at least like Alice in Chains. I mean, it was so early in their career. So getting an opportunity to land on something like that, like you hear it when he's walking up to the store and unlocking everything, you hear, Alice in Chains playing, and just think of the opportunity of that, right? Like 1994 Lane Staley going, I'm going to be everywhere.
Right. Then Skull's going to start with his movie. Yeah. And and it's such a thing too, because it was an indie movie.
Yeah, totally. Like completely independent, like from snout to tail. Absolutely an indie flick.
Yeah. And it was basically a handy cam, like whatever would have been the equivalent of a handy cam at the time.
Yep.
People that he knew instead of actors. Some of them became actors.
Some of them definitely became actors. Some of them, they already were legitimate actors, but they wound up playing like 3 or 4 different characters throughout the movie because he had people that would like flake on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he even had his mom. His mom played the milkmaid.
Yeah. Yep.
Like crazy. That's so weird when you really think about all that stuff. And another little fun bit on there is that it's based off the Divine Comedy. That's where
you get all of the like the various different like sections and stuff like that.
Yep. Represents the 9 circles.
Yep.
Yeah. It's awesome. But yeah, so I don't know. I guess I have a hard time finding anything wrong with this film. The only thing that I can really critique it with is that I think that the sheer amount of fucks that are spoken in this movie. I think it was 93 or 97. I don't remember what, but that many in an hour and a half flick, and all of the suggestive content, I guess we'll call it a suggestive content. I think that's about the biggest thing that could be a turnoff for a lot of viewers.
For some, yeah. It could be enough. You think about it, like when it first, the first original cut, when it was first being presented, it got slapped with an NC-17. The PMAA or whoever it is, they nailed it with an NC-17, and they had to fight to get that knocked down to a rated R. But there's no violence in this. There's no nudity in this. There's no
a little
like
bit of violence, but there's no blood.
The violence
he hit
is
him with a loaf of bread.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. You got a couple of nerds wrestling around in a convenience store. That's not violence.
No.
There's really none of that. It's all based off the dialogue alone. The dialogue is that, that big, it was that offensive to some, to where like they had to hit it with an NC-17 warning. Yeah. Whereas like some of us, you sit through Clerks and you're like, yeah, no, that was a shift at work. Like, it doesn't even, some of the, like with the language or the content doesn't even faze you.
I think another thing that's really kind of amazing about it is that especially now with it being, man, that is 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yep.
30 years ago, that was the world we lived in. Yeah. And I think that's part of why a lot of that stuff didn't bother me. Like a lot of the sex stuff and the language and everything, because that was the neighborhood that I grew up in as a kid. like everybody talked like that.
Yeah.
So it like there's no shock in all of that
there
language for
wasn't.
me.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it was like, I mean, at the time that movie would have come out, I would have been hanging out most of the time in like East Lawn there in Kearney, and
Mhm.
no, I mean, you walk outside and go to like the playground at East Lawn, or go to like the basketball
And
court or something, and
sit in
all of
those concrete
yeah,
tubes and smoke so that
Yep.
parents couldn't see you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
and those were the same kind of conversations that we would have had. Or, going up to the quick stop that was there on 39th Street.
Yep.
You would have had, you would have had those same kind of conversations hanging out in front of a convenience store.
Yep. And I mean, that was life at that time. And so, I mean, I guess that's why I never really felt like it was all that, offensive. I mean, though I know that plenty of people do take a lot of offense to the language and everything in this movie, but I mean, none quite so much as from some of the characters, particularly. And that's kind of the next segment I got is the characters, and on this one I kind of want to go from bottom to top. No, let's start from the top and go to the bottom because I want to save the best for last.
Right.
So we got the first one. We got Dante. Tell me your thoughts on Dante.
So Dante has got, Dante is Dante, right? He is genuinely or generally a pretty good dude, right? But at the same time, he's got some serious quirks to him. He's got some serious issues where he's definitely neurotic, very repressed in a lot of things, where he just lets people walk all over him and doesn't really stand up for himself. But he also he kind of lets that happen. His battle cry throughout the whole movie of like, I'm not even supposed to be here today, which has become like just this thing that we put in like the pop culture lexicon, right? But you see it throughout the movie where it's like it's his way to legitimize this like putting himself on a cross kind of behavior, where he lets things happen to him instead of trying to control his own destiny. And he uses that as like his excuse. My life sucks because of things happening to me instead of things that I'm actually doing, which is nothing, which is why I work at this convenience store.
Right. And that kind of brings to mind some things that I've kind of developed over time. It reminds me of any time I go to a convenience store or even a big box store like Walmart or something like that. You go through a lane for somebody and you go through a lane for somebody that hates their job. Like you just know. And the way that I always describe that is, that is somebody who is pissed off at you for them working that job.
Correct. Yes.
And it's like, and with some of those people, sometimes I don't know if it helps and I don't know if it hurts, but every once in a while, I like to tell those people, it's not my fault that you work here. If you don't like it, you can change that. You can make a difference with that. You aren't forced to do this. And I don't know, and sometimes you'll see those people that'll disappear from their job. And then and it's not like one of those things where I'm like, good, you son of a bitch, you didn't belong here anyway. To me, I hope to myself that maybe they did like what Dante didn't.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like it's almost like Goodwill Hunting, right? When like Affleck, says like one of these days I want to walk up to the door and like you're not there anymore because like dude fucked off and actually like did something with his life. So when you see that guy that's like no longer at Target or Walmart or the gas station that you go to every morning, you're like, oh man, I really hope that guy just like got a good job and got the hell out of here and did something with his life. Not, he got busted with his 4th DUI and he's going to be in the can
and
for
now
a while.
He's in jail.
Right.
Yeah, no, I really do hope the best for most of the time for people like that when that happens. And there are also people that are working at the gas stations that I go to that I hope stay there. Not because they're miserable, but because they're really great people. Okay. You remember going to Kearney? In Kearney, there was a guy that worked at Thirsties for fucking ever. His name was Josh. Super, super friendly guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when he'd talk, he was like, hey guys, how's it going? Like, I mean, it was almost a character.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it was like, oh man, if he left, the gas station that I go to in Kearney is Fill and Chill.
Okay.
And if he ever left that gas station, I'd have to go to wherever he went. If it was another gas station, because because he makes my experience at that gas station worth it.
Right. Yep. And I mean, there are some people you can tell, like, even though it might be, quote unquote, a menial job, right? Because people like, especially now these days, people like to talk so much shit on what could be considered a menial job, like whether that is, flipping burgers or working behind the, behind the counter at a gas station or something along those lines. But you can tell people that like genuinely enjoy that job, and they're good at it, and they make it like the customer service kind of job that it's supposed to be. Leave them the fuck alone. Like, yes, no,
that they
you
belong
stick
there.
here. Yeah, exactly. They do belong there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess that's kind of my thing with Dante is that, he just, I don't know. He doesn't belong there. He doesn't belong, riding a counter and getting people their cigarettes. But
no,
at the same time,
he knows he doesn't belong there. He's just too chicken shit to do anything about it.
Yeah. And he's too busy like focusing on that he's not supposed to be there that day.
Right. Yes.
Like, you're not supposed to be here this life, man. Like, go find something worth your while,
Right.
And then that kind of brings us to the next guy, who is actually quite the opposite, really. When you think about it, Randall.
Yeah.
Jeff Anderson. He is very literally the opposite. He feels very comfortable where he's at, and he loves what he does. Tell me your thoughts on Randall.
Yeah, it's spot on. Randall is almost like by design the polar opposite of Dante. Where in my notes I have him put here is nihilistically zen. Like he hates everything. He works with the public, but he hates the public.
Right.
And he's quite comfortable with his disdain for the public. But he's very much he does what he wants when he wants, and fuck you. Like he is almost way too far on the other side of Dante, to where he is just very self-involved, to where he's going to do exactly what he wants when he wants, and he doesn't give a shit what anybody else's thought is going to be.
Right. And I also really like that quote that you had taken down in there from Randall, this job would be great if it weren't for the fucking customers.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Who has not felt that way?
Oh my God, man. Yeah. And especially, any sort of public facing job, like you absolutely have that, whether it's going to be like your clients or if you're in the service industry of any sort, you're just like, you know what, this would actually be a really cool job if I didn't have to deal with fucking mutants.
Right. And then once you start getting into those, for a lack of a better word, those more prestigious jobs, then it's not even the clients that you have a problem with. It's not the customers. It's the administration that you don't want.
Yeah. At that point, your bitching goes upward, and and then you can't do anything about that.
No, not at all. So, except that, I mean, I guess you could choose to go to a different career. Don't be a Dante. Don't stay around in a place that you shouldn't be.
Yeah, shit or get off the pot, right?
The shit or get off the pot. That was Randall, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was Randall that said that. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, of course, and I love the way that you had this one put in on your notes too. Jay and motherfucking Silent Bob. Let's talk about these two sad motherfuckers.
Yes, Jay and Bob. Because every shitty job needs a couple of agents of chaos.
Yes, they do. I love, actually, that's one of my favorite things to do is to ask people about the the stupid people that they've worked with. Jen, I love it when she talks about the ones that she had when she lived in Hastings. She worked at a deli. Okay. As you could probably imagine how that story goes.
Sure.
Have you ever seen the movie Cashback?
Yes.
You remember the two jackasses that worked in the grocery store at Cashback?
Yes.
that's kind of, that is the British version of Jay and Silent Bob for me.
Yeah, I can see that.
They're both obnoxiously loud.
Well, I mean, Jay is probably loud enough for the both of them, so it balances out. Yeah.
Right. And that's the other thing about Jay and Silent Bob is that they break their own thing. Well, first off, Jay is just Jay, but Silent Bob, he doesn't talk often.
Right.
That's why they call him Silent Bob. But what I love about Silent Bob is that when he does talk, it really has purpose.
Yeah,
and that is
he says like the most
movies.
profound thing out of the whole fucking movie, right? You know, he's there like he's fucking Fat Kid Yoda or Yoda.
Fat Kid Yoda. Yeah. Now, see, in this guy, like, well, I mean, the one of the, I think it was up here in your nerdy trivia thing, how that was supposed to be, how Randall was supposed to be played by Kevin Smith.
Yeah, that's why Randall gets all the
so many great.
Yep, that's why he gets all the great lines, because Kevin Smith was going to give it to himself. Because it's a thing.
It's my movie, so of course I'm going to give myself the best lines.
Right.
But the cool thing is that like as Silent Bob, he's always delivering like the most profound lines in any of the movies that he's in, and I feel like that's more fitting. It is Kevin Smith anyway.
Yeah, and because like for Kevin Smith being Silent Bob and like giving that profound, like little nugget of wisdom throughout the whole fucking movie, that's like when that'd be when like Stan Lee shows up in the Marvel movies. Right. Like he shows up in like just the right time, and he is just Stan Lee, and it's there enough to know that it's the guy that gave us all of this, and he's still participating. And that's right. Kevin Smith's like Stan Lee moment when he does shit like that. Right.
The next section is just kind of all of our little talking points that we kind of pulled together, and the handpicked ones that I put in there. Your nerdy trivia one I really liked. I liked your nerdy trivia point of interest. How the movie was made for less than 30,000. I think it was 27,000.
Yep.
And the bulk of that was off of an insurance settlement for car insurance.
He got an insurance settlement off of a car accident. That him and Jason Mewes was in. And then the rest of it was credit cards. You know, he
comic books.
Yep. Yeah. He sold off a bunch of comic books, got everything else in credit cards. And then there was the where they got the film, if I remember correctly, they didn't take credit cards. So he had to borrow like $3,000 from his parents.
Yep. And so the estimated amount on IMDb was $27,000 to make this movie.
Right.
I can't imagine how much more he made off of this movie.
Oh my God. It's huge. Absolutely huge.
Essentially this is what funded Dogma.
Yeah.
You know, and which, what's going on with Dogma, right? Oh, so sad. Like I was looking for it last night. I was just going to buy all of the Kevin Smith movies just all in one shot last night.
Right.
On Amazon. Couldn't find Dogma. I was like, why can't I find Dogma? Went and looked it up. Of course, there's got to be some kind of argument somewhere.
Oh man!
So you cannot buy it streaming anywhere. If you don't own it on hard media, you can't watch it.
Is it because of the association with Miramax, or is it because of the religious aspects?
Well, it's actually what was his name? Weinstein. The Weinstein Company.
That would be the Miramax Association then.
Yeah. They own rights to it, and they had never made streaming rights.
Gotcha.
Agreements. Okay. And so because there are no streaming rights agreements, like
they can't do anything with it. Yep.
Weinstein is like really holding on to it and trying to get as much as they can out of it. Whereas Kevin Smith is like, I just want it to be available for people.
Right.
And like at one time, the value was like $5 million or something like that. And Kevin Smith tried to offer it to him and they wouldn't take it. And so like basically the Weinstein Company, as Kevin Smith put it, is holding Dogma streaming rights hostage. So until that gets figured out, nobody can watch it on streaming.
You know, just multiple reasons to dislike that person. I mean, obviously he's a trash human being for much more like legitimate reasons, but God damn it, man.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah,
mess with my
it's
dogma.
bullshit. Yeah. And then this one I really liked. And I tried to look more into it when I found it. And I saw that you found it too, but this is something that's according to IMDb, that it was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress, who deemed it culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Yep.
Which, I mean, I that's cool.
Well, yeah, and it's completely legitimate. I mean, how many things, are in like the our everyday words because of Clerks.
Right. Well, and how much of that movie represents the youth of an entire generation.
Absolutely.
I mean, again, like we had said earlier, that was everybody's first job. That was everybody's, typical Saturday. That was, I mean, even for the people who were 10 years old when that movie came out,
right.
That movie was the world for those people at that time.
And because we live in a country that doesn't like to learn from its mistakes, it still is, for a lot of people, the conversations that were had in that movie, they're still just as valid 30 years later as they were back in 94.
Yeah. The clothes and the hair have changed, but the situations haven't, you know?
Oh, and even some of the clothes and the hair are starting to come back, man. We're old enough to where that shit's retro now, man.
Now, yeah, I suppose
the Utes these days.
Jinko jeans popped up on my Facebook not terribly long ago. I was like, oh man, I'd probably get in so much trouble wearing those to work.
Yeah, you see things like Jinkos, starting to make comebacks and things like that, and you're like, damn it, I can be one of the cool kids now. 30 years later, but I can be one of the cool kids now.
I also like that you had on here that the choice to film in black and white was a budget call.
Yep.
And it was because it was cheap, and it was.
Yeah. There was a clip that I'd found where Jason Mewes, he always makes sure that he sets that record straight, because so many people think it's like an artistic reason, right? That he was trying to do some sort of like film noir kind of a thing. And Mewes always makes sure that he's like, no, it's not for any sort of artistic anything. It's because we were fucking broke.
Because they were.
Yes.
Probably one of the most profound things I've seen said about this movie is that it's a love letter to anyone who's ever worked a shitty job.
Yes.
More than just a shit job, though, a shit job that dealt with the public. And that kind of ties in a little bit with a couple of the suggestions that I had on there, that Dante gets walked on regularly, and that I relate very much to the pessimism of Dante, particularly while he's painting his girlfriend's nails.
Yep.
Now, like that whole conversation while they were sitting on the floor behind the counter, that kind of started to go into some into the realm of some things that are actually very sensitive now.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about anybody's anatomy. It's some of the stuff with like the double standards, sexism, what we know now, what we refer to now, I guess, as, things like healthy and toxic masculinity, in some ways. Tell me kind of your thoughts on some of the stuff between then and now, as far as some of that dialogue goes with some of that.
I mean, with that scene in particular, it was interesting because it also pointed towards like Dante is kind of being down on himself, right? Because he's not caring, he doesn't care about like him getting anything out of it. When you're talking about the physical aspects of the relationship, he's not caring too much about like him, because he says, it's easy for guys, right? That if you actually want to be skilled, like the more important part is making sure that she gets hers, which I mean was actually ahead of its time in 1994.
Right.
That wasn't, that we were still, we were still stuck in like the old, like as people would call it now, the toxic masculinity part of it, of like, no, dude gets his and that's all that matters. So it was very much, starting that conversation of, where it was just as important for the woman as it was for the dude. But it also, it does go into kind of like that toxic masculinity portion of it to a certain degree, that like in like 94, guys were still trying to figure out where they fit. Right. You still had that attitude of like, boys don't cry. Right.
Right.
Men don't have feelings. Men just go to work and they take all of their feelings and they just put it in their stomach, and then it eventually becomes colon cancer in their 50s and it gets cut out of their asshole. That was still the attitude back in 94, even for the Gen X people. That was still the attitude. Whereas now that's changed a little bit. Depending on like where you're at in the country, that has changed a bit to where like guys are a little bit more allowed to be, touchy feely, right? We're allowed to have, more of the emotions, but there are still some communities, some smaller towns, some areas, you and I live here,
right,
where like you still have some remnants of that shit that's around, of like men are men, that kind of attitude.
Right. Well, and I mean, again, that does kind of point at the differences in cultures between different places within the country. I mean, in the Midwest, as a generality, I think the Midwest is pretty good in the acclimation sort of way, coming in with some of these new ideas and everything. But I mean, it's the rural areas that are kind of still in the back on how they feel about the new terminologies for things like toxic and healthy masculinity. Now, the ideas themselves, I guess really it's just kind of one of those things where it really just depends on, where the person has grown up and where they allow themselves to recognize the culture as it changes and whether it's okay. Like, it's almost like they're waiting for the rest of their people to tell them that the change is okay.
Right. Yep.
And
exactly.
when you have a whole group of people waiting for the rest of their group to say that it's okay, then nobody says okay.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And so then you wind up with a bunch, like what you said, a bunch of middle-aged white dudes with a bunch of anger and hate and all of that stuff, because they took all of their hurt and sadness and all of that stuff and stuffed it in, deep down in themselves. Yep. They bottled it all up and they're just waiting for it to fucking explode.
Correct.
Which for all those people who hear about explosions in the Midwest, those aren't meth labs. Those are just angry middle-aged white dudes that are finally exploding from all of their emotions.
It's both.
Yeah, it's both. But
yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, that kind of repression, right? That turns into domestic violence, that turns into alcoholism, that turns into self-damaging behavior. Addiction. Yes. Yeah, exactly. It turns into a lot of really bad negative shit because it never gets, worked out of their system.
Right. One of the other things that, like, in particular in this story that kind of came up was the whole blowjobs versus sex thing.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah. When he freaks out on his girlfriend because, like, she had said that she had slept with 3 guys. He had slept with 12, and she kind of freaked out on him a little bit about, sleeping with 12 women. But then it comes out a little bit later, like 5 minutes later, that she had filleted 36 dudes.
Yeah.
And she didn't consider that to be sex. And he freaked out and was abusing her. He was verbally abusing this woman.
Yeah. I mean, he was completely out of line in his response to it. And it points to a couple of things, like one, it points to the double standard, he was fine with the with the cards being stacked in his direction, but he was not okay when it was stacked in her direction. Like, then it became this whole big to do. But it was also, it talked about, or it spoke to, the definition of sex or lack of,
Right.
Where it's like, sex is sex, but blowjobs are just blowjobs.
Right.
Wait a fucking minute.
Yeah. Well, and that's a conversation I remember having, in the late 90s and early 2000s, even at our Perkins gatherings. I remember that coming up a couple of times, people arguing on either side, one or the other, is oral sex, is that sex? Well, I mean, first off, it's called oral sex.
Correct.
So yes, it is, like,
Yes.
and,
if
and
the
all this
clinical
other
term
stuff.
involves sex, well then yes.
Right. So, although then that would also, by definition, also make phone sex.
Yes.
Which, yeah, I guess. Well, and even then,
psychologically, it is.
Psychologically, that's what it is. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So, yeah, it fits the bill. Higher expectations of her than he has of himself was the other part that I had of that.
Oh yeah.
He, like you said, he was okay when he was the one that was winning, quote unquote.
Right.
Jen and I actually just had a conversation about this earlier today, not this very specific thing, but how everything today needs, and really since I can remember, needs to be a competition.
Right.
Like everybody is always in competition with everybody else at all times. And so, like, I don't know that his problem was really that she had filleted 36 other dudes, or that it was that he was losing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the numbers were against him. Yeah.
Right. Like it was more of a competition that he was just now suddenly losing.
Yeah.
And, but when he was 12-3, then God damn it, he's the man and he's in charge,
right.
Like I just, I don't know, but, yeah, that's kind of what kind of came up for that.
And that's so much of a typical like double standard when you're talking about, when you're looking at like the differences of like how we treat sex and the genders, that is a very typical double standard. It's thankfully we're getting away from that in like the later generations to where it's more that like nobody gives a shit. But especially like when you and I were teenagers, that was very much a thing.
Right.
Like if a chick had, if a woman had slept with like more than like 2 or 3 guys, oh my God, she's a whore. Like you had all sorts of colorful, terrible, horrible names that you would throw out to somebody. But yet if you knew a guy and he was lying his ass off, because this doesn't happen at 16 in Nebraska, but if you knew a guy that said that he'd nailed like, 12 different chicks or something, that guy was a stud. He was an absolute king of men, He
was a hero.
Correct. Yeah. He was the baddest motherfucker in the land. But no, I mean, that is just as much of a whore. More so, actually.
Why is he a whore? Or why is he a hero and not a
she's
slut?
A whore. Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
Yeah. It's I'm glad that we've kind of gotten a little bit more away from that, like you've said. Like I've at least in our social circles. I don't know if it's changed with some of the younger populations or whatever, but
I think as like the younger generations now. Now granted, I don't have kids, and I'm not spending a whole lot of time with Zoomers because I don't need to be. Right, I have no real business being around Gen Z. It's just creepy at this point. However, I think some of the younger generations, they are a lot more sex positive. So there's a lot less to be ashamed about, and I think that is where a lot of this comes into.
Yeah, well, and that's very true. I mean, back when this movie was made, that was still something that was
still taboo. Yeah.
Yeah, Gen X before us. Of course, how old are you?
I'll be 40 here in a couple of months.
Oh, okay. So you're a millennial with me.
Correct. But at the same time, because we were in the Midwest, like, yeah, we are on paper elder millennials, but because we're here in the Midwest and because we were both, growing up with the working poor, we kind of were honorary Gen X because, like we didn't have some of the same like social things, some of the same social cues that other millennials of our time would have had.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, this is something that my sister's generation, I feel like she's like 5 years older than me. I feel like that because she was, let's see, 15 when this came out.
Okay.
So she would have been more in that kind of social area where that stuff would have been a little bit more.
She's exactly their audience.
Pertinent. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like that Gen X did a really good job of kind of trailblazing the whole, let's not make this whole thing a religious thing or a judgment thing, right, or whatever. And let's just call it what it is. It's sex, and it's something that some people enjoy and some people don't, and some people enjoy it in other ways. And so why do we have to make a big deal about it and just normalize it and make it a regular thing and not pretend that it's some thing that you have to keep hidden somewhere?
But you're applying logic to people's naughty parts, Ben, and how dare you?
That's exactly it. So I feel like Gen X did a really great job of kind of trailblazing that, and I feel like that really when it comes to really sealing that deal, I feel like the millennials did a perfect job of finishing it.
We did a lot better. Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of that stuff has kind of gone away. I mean, of course, there's the exceptions. We live in the rural Midwest,
correct?
So there's still a lot of that religious influence on how it's bad just because Jesus doesn't like to think that you're pulling your pud.
Burn the witch. Get the scarlet letter.
So yeah. Now the next point you had on here was the hell is the public?
Oh my God, man. Yeah, because I mean, I had that specifically as a talking point because I mean it's one thing to have a shitty job, right? Mm-hmm. And Kevin Smith himself has said that this was for everybody that's ever worked a shitty job, but it's more than just that. There have been a lot of because I've worked a lot of shitty jobs, and there's like you can have a shitty job, but if you're not interacting with people, then really just the shitty job is just the job itself, right? Mm-hmm. And that'll eventually end. Or if it's if it's something to where like it's just a hellish fucking job, yeah, eventually it's gonna end. You're gonna go home, and it's just this is the job, right? And it doesn't really change, so that part of the suck just becomes this like this din, right? This kind of dull din in the back of your mind of like, no, eventually, when I'm 64, I'll be long gone from here. Right. You'll be able to pull that off. But then, when you're dealing with the public, that just turns into this fucking smorgasbord of mutants that you wind up dealing with on a regular basis. And I mean, in this movie, this is just one day. In the life of, these guys that work at a video store and a convenience store. This is just one day in their life, but these people are fucking real, man. Like these people are real. This shit happens. Like the milkmaid thing, that's a thing. Like that you see those people in actual like stores and gas stations and whatnot, where like those people exist. And it's that interaction of dealing with like the lower common denominator of the public that you have to put up with, and you still have to be nice to them, because if you're not, you're going to be out on your ass. Like you can't tell somebody you're a shitty human being. You have to just eat it and, give them their pack of smokes and hand them back their change and say thank you and have a nice fucking day. Like that's what you have to do. Yeah, no, dude, like that's a special kind of hell.
Now I gotta be at least a little bit honest with you here. I'm gonna get in real close to my microphone as I'm telling you this. So the milkmaid thing, that is totally me to an extent. I'm not even joking. Like I will totally go to like, I'm not so bad that I will pull them all out.
Right.
And get all the way to the back, but I will go through the front and maybe even the second row, like looking through the front row to the
check
row
for like the
it,
oldest date that you can get
and find the one that's furthest away from me.
Yeah, I've done
in
it.
A positive direction.
I've done it.
I will totally do that.
Yep.
I will also go to the grocery store and I will go to the bread aisle and I will lift up the top loaf to grab one from underneath, and then I will squeeze it just a little bit
Okay, you
Just
might have
to
lost
check.
me on that one. You might have lost me on that one.
I'll squeeze it just a little bit, and I'll go, that's good and soft.
All
And then
right.
that's the one that I take home. Yeah. So I totally get the milkmaid thing, at least in a small way.
Right.
I'm definitely not going to pull them all out and whatever, but
Just don't make it like inconvenient for everyone else around you when you're doing it, because then it's almost like
Right.
it's almost like picking your produce, right?
Right.
Where you go in, you're like squeezing the melon to make sure that it's ripe or something along those lines. It's the same thing, right? To a
Right.
certain degree, it's the same thing. But just don't be a douchebag about it, right? As you've said, you're not pulling out like all of the gallons of milk and putting them in the fucking, in the aisleway while you're looking for your glass slipper, right?
Yeah. So the milkmaid thing. And then after that, the gum guy.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, that fucking guy. You're not going to probably see that in like this day and age of something like that, where
No.
like the guy is going up and like scaring the shit out of smokers, right? But
Right.
how likely would you see if somebody like like signing a petition, right?
Right.
Where you might see somebody like hanging out in front of a gas station, like, hey, would you sign this petition? Whether you're for it or against it, it could be something to do with women's health, could be also something to do with like legalization of pot, right? It doesn't matter, but you have somebody that's like camped out in front of your establishment that may or may not be like chasing your customers away, which is
Right.
exactly who that gum guy was. And, and like, sure, it got played up to where, eventually at one point he was like comparing Dante to a Nazi
Right.
for just following orders. Right. But
Right.
I just ridiculous. But it's you might still, see the same kind of thing to where you've got somebody that might be protesting or, somebody that has a problem with particular establishment, like they're causing a disruption of some sort. And, it's trying to find that line of like, okay, do I bounce this guy out of my fucking store and risk like losing my job, or do I just take his shit?
So the last point of interest that I had on here was everything started to wrap up on the second time that I watched this movie. And a lot of that had to do with each of the characters.
Right.
All of them. Dante, Randall, Jay, Silent Bob, all of them. They all seem to embody a small part of everybody that we don't like or are ashamed of.
Sure.
But they all also seem to embody a small part of all of us that we embrace. As an example, like with Dante is very much he lets people walk on him. He doesn't really do much as far as fighting for himself or anything like that in all of his social situations. But at the same time, he's a really nice guy.
Yep.
So the good things about Dante are things that we like to like about ourselves. And the shit things about Dante are the things that we like to hate about ourselves.
Correct.
And I kind of noticed that with everybody. I mean, is that something that you can kind of
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, that is definitely spot on for all of them. There are parts of the characters that, we can really identify with, and the parts of the characters that we can identify with that we don't want to.
Right.
I mean, absolutely. Because, you look at like Randall. Okay. Randall very much has that fuck you, I am who I am kind of attitude. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But also to the degree to where it gets caustic. And, and you find out, in like, Clerks 2 and Clerks 3, I mean, that comes at a great cost, to where like he, in like Clerks 3, without giving away too much, he's pretty much that same person 30 years later. Like, that's not gonna work, dude. Like that's not something that scales. Like if you're gonna be that kind of an asshole for 30 years, you're gonna be a lonely son of a bitch.
Right.
There has to be some compromise in there. And and he knows that about himself. And but at the same time, while Randall has that almost caustic personality, he's also still very loyal. He says to the ex-girlfriend that Dante's still hung up on, like, you hurt her again, I'll fucking kill you. He is still very much loyal to his friend and will stick up for his friend while also at the same time calling him out on his bullshit. So like he still has good qualities to him while also being a caustic son of a bitch. Dante, like you mentioned, Dante is actually a legitimately good person while also being a sad sack. Jay and Bob, Jay and Bob are fucking dealers, man. Like they're fucking slinging in front of a fucking convenience store. But yet Jay is this goofy Saint Bernard of a person. And then, and Bob is Bob. Like Bob drops the most profound line of the whole freaking movie, even though, he's supposedly a dope peddler in the middle of a fucking quick stop.
Right. Well, and again, Jay and Silent Bob, I think there's a part of all of us that wants to be destructive and rude and offensive. But then at the same time, the other side of Jay and Silent Bob is that wisdom piece.
Yeah.
It comes from Bob once every movie, well, sometimes twice. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of found that it was really neat that there were some things about each of these characters that I was like, there's a part of that in me, with just about all of them.
Oh yeah, totally. This whole movie is a study of characters, not just the main characters that you have, but also any of the supporting characters that wind up being in there. Any of the customers that come in are people that I've identified as, people that I've dealt with, but also I've been that guy sometimes. Or you've got like all of us, we know a Snowball. Right. Every one of us, we know a guy that would identify as Snowball, or every one of us, we know somebody that would have been Berserker in our particular group. Right. Like we would have like these are all just characters that he came up with. And the whole movie is just based off of the dialogue that these people have with each other. And it's, like you find bits and pieces of who you would identify with in every single character.
I like it. So tell me, do you have an active ingredient in this movie?
I would say the active ingredient in this is that, it's perspective, it's being able to see the perspective that, other people went through something that would be similar to the same kind of like menial bullshit job that you had in like your late teens, early 20s. Other people had this too. Other people went through the same issues. They had the same kind of conversations, and that, maybe to a certain degree, you're not that special, but also that means you're not that different, which becomes a less isolating kind of experience.
For me, it was probably a little bit less deep. It was a little bit more surfacey. It kind of takes me back to the first episode of Movie RX, where I talked about how I had some very severe uncontrollable anger issues for a very long time. But it takes me back to that in a way that it reminds me how much I could let things around me affect me and the mood that I had, that I was giving the world control over what happened to me.
Gotcha.
Kind of like the whole thing with Dante that we were talking about. The reason why it's an active ingredient for me is because it kind of serves as a reminder to stop letting everything around me affect me so much.
I get that.
And for me to affect the world around me more than it does the other way around. But it also reminds me of the time when men weren't quite so open to understanding women. Right. When we thought we'd figured it out and how to be sensitive because of cunnilingus, suddenly we are saints now because we figured that out. But there's so much more to it than that. And that we're only just now starting to see as a people, and only some people still, that things just still aren't quite equal in a shit ton of ways.
Yeah. There's still a lot of baggage there. We still have a lot of work ahead of us on being able to, equal that out. Right.
Right. And so it just kind of renews my thought that it kind of gives me a new purpose in remembering that when going out into the world and thinking about those things in a different sense. So that's kind of what it is for me. But anyway, thank you That's about the time that we got for this shit today. So, thanks, Derrick.
Thanks for having
you
me.
got anything you want to plug?
Well, I mean, as is typical, probably the angry musician. So still making music with Mortal Desire, MORTALDEZIRE. Hit that up on YouTube, Spotify, anything that streams. If you want to hear loud, angry music.
That's awesome. And then I'd really like to have you back. I like that movie list you sent me. There will probably be a couple more that I'll suggest that you come back for.
Oh yeah, totally,
so,
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Always glad to come
up.
back. Always glad to talk about, movies more than just on the surface level.
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a movie that's been medicine for you and you'd like to be on a show, you can email me at contact@movie-rx.com, or you can leave a voicemail or text me at 308-519-5790. If anxiety is keeping you from trying to come on the show, you can write me a couple of paragraphs about a movie and I can read them on air. Remember, this movie is not intended to treat, cure, or prevent any disease, and we'll see you at the next appointment.
Yeah, it's a hot day. I'm hanging in the sunshine. You should hit me with a splash gun so I cool down. Won't you come on over? We can party till the sun's down. Baby, let me buy you a drink while we're dancing and blink. I can go for some queen me too. Hey baby, if you're looking for some crazy, I tell you everybody's standing in line for the Waterslide. You can come on over, we can take the roller coaster. And you know everybody's looking for a ride in the Waterslide. Surfing on the wave of good feelings. Well, it's just another Friday.